I'll share one of the most traumatizing experiences of my life, but you'll need a bit of background before I just jump into green text. It'll be long. Firstly, I love my father in spite of his failings. He was a horribly evil man who hurt everyone who came near him, including his children. My mother was from a well-off family, but had been disinherited because of her erratic behavior. She'd been a waitress when she met my father, first real work she had probably ever had to do, and my father led her down a path of drug addiction. By the time I was born, my father was the ripe young age of 50, and perhaps realizing my mother had run her course, he had taken her to court and won full custody of me. This wasn't for my benefit, but because with me came a nice fat social security check. My father suffered from PTSD from Nam and other psychological maladies. Because of this, I often spent months living with his ex-wife while my dad had whores and junkies. Eventually, he had lost the apartment and acquired a small townhome. As per usual, whenever my dad moved, I had to move with him. And this time, he'd gotten me a puppy, who's now in the corner snoring, now a senior, not long for this world. My grandmother had visitation rights to me, thanks New Jersey legal system, and my experience happened when I was supposed to be spending the weekend at her house. Be 15, grabbing my bags to stay at Granny's. Granny's downstairs talking with my dad. For once, it seems civil. Grab my pup and ask Granny if I can bring him, knowing she intends to say no since she hates animals. This time she shocks me and agrees, making sure I have everything I need. We get in the car and a blanket of heavy falls on me. It's like I cannot speak or move. I'm like paralyzed. I am overwhelmed by a feeling of concern. Something is wrong, but I cannot speak or even turn my head. I shift my gaze over to my granny. My granny is driving normally, but has a big frown on her face. Normally she would be probing me for information about my home situation. She probably feels whatever this is as well. She suddenly pulls into a Wawa, or a convenience store, and gets out of the car. I don't follow her. I remain in the car when my cell phone rings. At that moment, the blanket is gone, and everything's back to normal. I answer the phone, and it's my father. Doobie, or that's my nickname. Where the hell are you? He asked. I'm with Mom. We stopped at Wawa, I replied. It got very quiet, and then my dad spoke as if he was crying. You should have said goodbye before you left. But I did. I gave you a hug and I left, my dad said. Oh, and then excused himself, hanging up on me. I put the phone down and briefly wondered if my dad was getting Alzheimer's when I picked up on the goodbye. My dad's very against saying goodbye because it means forever. At most, you would say bye or see you later. This blanket feeling is still gone, but I have this extremely strong feeling that I need to go home. When my granny gets in the car, she doesn't start it right away. I know I have to get home, but my granny never gives up her visitation days. We both sit for a couple of seconds in silence, and then I tell her I need to go home. Her eyes get teary, which is the first time I'd ever seen my granny even close to tears. Up until that point, I had always seen her as a stone-cold killer with ice water in her veins. Well, if you have to, then you have to, she says. Once again, not even trying to fight this. She drives me home. I grab my stuff, and she leaves without a word. I walk into my home expecting my father to be dead on the floor, as crazy as that sounds. Nope, he's sitting on his recliner, in the dark, watching TV. I put the puppy down and he runs to my dad. He was more of my dad's than anyone else's, even though we'd only had him for about 10 days. Instead of running upstairs to play PlayStation games, I sit down and just look at my dad. He smiles at me and tells me he's glad I decided to come home. That entire night, we talk theology. I talk about life, hopes, and dreams. He shares his regrets, his wrongdoings, and his goal to see me graduate high school. We stay up far too late on this father-son night, and my dad needs a little help up the stairs to bed. Once we get to the top, he tells me he'll be okay and walks to his bedroom down the hall. Before I go into my room, he calls my name and tells me that he loves me, and that he's sorry. I figure he's apologizing for worrying me. I tell him not to stress it, and that I love him too. It's very late. I crawl into bed with my pup and curl myself into a ball. I wake up at 1:32 a.m., even though it was much later when I had fallen asleep. Someone is knocking on our front door very loudly. I shout to my dad to let him know someone's at the door, but all I hear is a snoring. I'm almost a full-grown man, at the age of 15, so I muster my courage and I walk downstairs slowly. Every step feels as though I'm melting into the steps. With every step, it gets harder to take the next, but I press on. As I reach the first floor, the banging stops. Yet I can see through the privacy window that the screen door is being held open. I know they're there waiting for me to open the door. I know that I should not open the door while my dad is asleep. My hand reaches for the knob and I cannot stop myself. I open the door wide, and there stands a shadow man. He was close to 7 feet, and from his outline, I could see he was wearing a hat and a long coat, though there was no detail, only black. It was like his image was sucking the light out of the air. That's how I felt, at least at the time. The sickly orange glow of the streetlight faded short of him. I tried to look into his face, but there was only the foggiest hint of red, like taillights that are very far away. I was frozen again, this time in fear. I knew this meant death, that I was gonna die. I kept having this crazy thought of how this is how I die. This is how I always die. I'm going to die and nobody will care how I died, because nobody will know. I was building up to a state of panic, but I couldn't move. All the while, the shadow man just stood there. Even though he made no movement, I somehow knew he was going to kill me. At this exact moment, I heard a woman speak behind me. She was my mother. Not my birth mother, but my real mother. And she was telling me to turn around and go to bed. I wanted to scream how I couldn't move, how I couldn't get away, but my body had turned and was climbing up the steps. The shadow man was behind me. I know. Climbing these steps behind me, though I could not see or hear him. I walked into my room and shut the door when I was able to control myself again. I somehow knew I'd be safe in here, that the shadow man couldn't find me in here, but I didn't feel relieved, because the front door was still open. I knew I had to close that door or the shadow man would get my dad. Instinctively, I reached for the door when something stopped me. Opening the door meant death for me, without a doubt. Keeping the door shut meant death for my father, without a doubt. I started to cry as I made my choice, and I climbed into bed. I woke up in the morning, but I didn't get out of bed. I just laid there, too frightened, even in the morning light, to move. I kept telling myself it was all a nightmare, a horribly vivid nightmare, and that all I would have to do was open my bedroom door. Another hour went by before I finally opened the door. Baseball bat in my right and a pillow in my left. When I opened the door, a rush of relief met me. From the top of the steps, I could see that the front door was shut. My dad's door was open, and as I walked slowly down the steps, I could see he was in his typical sleeping position. Not wanting to wake him, since we'd stayed up late, I decided to just have cereal and watch some TV. Morning turned to afternoon as my stepmom started blowing up the phone for us to get up, so we could get going to the vets. We were going to get my pup neutered. I felt a sinking feeling as I climbed up the steps, but I put it out of my mind. I grew numb knowing what I was going to find, but for the sake of an invisible audience, I played my part. I walked into the bedroom, and I told my dad it was time to get up. I loudly joked and banged on the dresser, knowing that he wasn't breathing. I grabbed his leg, stiff as an oak, and I tried to shake him. I couldn't though, so I moved up to his face and I looked at him. He looked very peaceful, though I noticed freaky blue veins on his face. I knew he was gone, but I still pretended for my audience that I believed he was only sleeping. I don't know how long this went on, but inevitably, I called 911 in a very fake panic, saying that my father wasn't breathing, and then my stepmother to calmly tell her that my dad was gone. The story continues to this day. In a sense, I've shared this feeling the very next day with all my half-siblings, with grown men and women who hated my father with an unbridled fury. I'm not convinced they didn't know something more. In fact, my gut tells me they know a lot more than I do. But these days, they're dropping like flies and taking their secrets to the grave. I often wonder if they see the shadow man in their final moments. I'm also scared that I will as well. I live in Saskatchewan, and when I was in grade 7 back in the early 2000s, the grade 8 class went to Cypress Hills on a camping trip. This is fucked up. I'm shaking typing this, so I'm just gonna make this into a green text. Arrive at Cypress Hills after an incident where a teacher ran out of gas and one of the other vans had to go get a gas can and rescue them. Yes, this incident was a source of merriment, even into high school. It was hilarious having a teacher fuck up. Anyways, they arrive, set up, and the teachers say they can go on a group walk. Supervised, of course. Everyone decides they want to walk into the wilderness adjacent to the group camping area, so off they go. Immediately see a moose and find a large tower-like structure made of logs, which was apparently astoundingly slippery due to the rain. After climbing on this tower with the teachers praying to the god of permission slips, they move on. It's beginning to get dark, as they arrived at around 6 and it was 8:30 before they finished setting up. The teachers say, "Okay, time to go back." Everyone pulls out a flashlight and laughs. Keep exploring, with one teacher keeping track of the route that they take. Come upon an area where they can see a moderately clear area, but a stream blocks their path, and the teachers told them that they weren't getting wet unless everyone brought wetsuits and towels. His sentence trails off as he looks across the stream, and a female teacher asks, "What is that?" A vaguely human-like figure in the trees past a clear area, and it was almost glowing, it was so white. Moved extremely jerkily and just wrong, as the student who told us the story described. 3 female kids start screaming that it's not an animal or human or anything, and that they need to go back. Teachers are clearly wanting to run just as bad as most of the kids. Some kids clutching at teachers as if they were their parents. Can't just book it as kids will surely become separated. Teachers just say it's an albino moose or something, and that they should head back as it's very dark, and the stream is preventing them from continuing straight. Head back, make fire, eat fire-cooked stuff. Everyone's tense but enjoying themselves. Fucking starts raining, everyone decides it's now bedtime. Sometime in the middle of the night. One person says his watch read 3 a.m., another claimed it was closer to 2. One of the groups of girls just starts screaming frantically. Teachers flock out of tents, as well as a few students who didn't care about how wet they would get. Guy telling this story included. He made a quip about him grabbing his wetsuit and towel before exiting the tent. Teacher yells at something to shoo. Another teacher just straight up yells, "What the fuck is that, Dave?" Dave is our teacher. I suppose at this point, for some clarification, I should mention that this section of the story was relayed to us by another student a day after they returned from the trip, and our teacher Dave allowed him to tell us this story during class time. At this point of the story, Dave claims the grade 8 teacher didn't actually swear, and the student relaying the story was exaggerating, which we all believed, as that grade 8 teacher was extremely laid back and mellow. I can't remember the name of the student telling the story though. Anyways, the teachers are all yelling, and something audibly scampers off, or shuffles or something, into the woods. The students who left their tents are freaking out, the girls are still screaming, and a park ranger actually comes to the camp 20 minutes later, as campers a good ways away heard the commotion and reported it. The teachers explain the situation, and the park ranger says he's not sure what it could have been, but that it was just likely a moose or a deer, and that they're just not used to seeing them in the dark. Everyone sleeps the last few hours, or claims they did at the very least, and that nothing of interest happens for the rest of the trip. The guy relaying this story to us said they called it the White Man, and they pranked each other a lot on the last day. Now this was a yearly thing for the last 3 years. Grade 8s raise some dough and go to Cypress Hills for a weekend. So we were shitting ourselves when it was our turn the next year. So, a year passes. Most people have forgotten about the White Man story, and some are fairly excited. On the way there, someone jokes to the teacher driving our van to check her fuel gauge. Someone mentions looking for Bigfoot in the woods. I then add, "Or the White Man," having forgotten about it until cryptozoology was brought into the mix. Everyone just stops. Teacher driving our van did not go last year, and doesn't seem to know what we're on about, or just thinks it's some kid's story. She was pretty ditzy. We arrive and set up, and while setting up, the mellow teacher lets out a string of curses when the U-Haul that we used to move our camping stuff didn't want to open. I then think about the "what the fuck is it, Dave" incident. We get set up though, and decide upon exploration, as kids are wanting to do. Ask teachers about the log tower thing in the woods. They show us the way. Climb on it like little moronic monkeys. Go for a small walk deeper into the woods. Nothing interesting. Teachers insist that we head back when it starts getting a bit dark, even though a few kids brought flashlights. All the teachers had flashlights hidden in their coats as well, we later found out. First night was nice, had a talent show, ate lots of junk food. It went well. First night was nice, oops. Next day, we try to go to a touristy spot, which is closed for whatever reason. We go back to the campsite and decide to mess around on the tower and play some sort of pretend gun fight thing. By we, I meant me and 8 other guys. Most of the girls just stayed and hung out at the campsite. A couple guys did as well. We're gonna go play a board game and bet candy or some shit. That one weird kid is lying on the ground with his legs vertical on a tree, reading some book. Before we went to explore, we were taking photos of him being weird for whatever reason. It's amazing the details you remember in these situations. Anyways, a teacher accompanies us, the ditzy one that drove us. We all mess around, she's all, "Be careful," the whole time. Rained a bit the previous night, not enough to disturb our sleep, but enough to be noticeable in the morning. So, as a result, it was slippery as fuck. We were used to it being relatively dry, and one kid takes a nasty tumble off the makeshift ladder that we had to make, just to get to the top of this tower thing, which was only about 8 feet above the ground or so, and he isn't seriously hurt, but he has a few cuts that looked worse than they were. The ditzy teacher panics and takes him back to camp. We decide the best course of action is to explore further than the previous night. It's about 3 p.m. at this point. Start talking about Bigfoot, and then immediately after that, the white man. A little into our exploration, a deer takes off into the woods. We shit ourselves and we run back. Of course, we all know it was a deer, but we claim it was Bigfoot, yada yada. Kids are stupid lying fucks. That evening, we want to explore more. Wait until teachers are occupied and think we're hanging out in our tents. We head off, flashlights and sharpened sticks in hand. One of the funnier guys in our class manages to get super ahead of us without us noticing, and jumps from behind a tree, in his underwear, scaring the shit out of us. We ask why he's almost nude, and he says he thought his clothes were too reflective, and that he could hide better that way. And the moron forgot where he dropped his clothes. We start looking for them, splitting into 2 or 3 groups. I forget exactly how many there were. My group was the largest, 6 of us out of the 10 or 11 total. We go in roughly the same direction, flashlight beam still visible, but not in one group. Find his clothes, he gets dressed while I take a piss, and another guy gives me some light to piss by. He's facing into the woods in one direction, and I'm facing in the opposite direction. He's pointing the flashlight behind him towards me. Flashlight goes off of me as I'm zipping back up, and he just yells out, "White man." I turn and look, and sure enough, some large-ass thing is in the woods a good ways away, obscured by trees, and glowing light almost. Probably due to the flashlight. Shit, it was probably 10:30 or 11 at night. I should mention that. Him and I start screaming. Not yelling, screaming. And the rest of the group comes over. They were only about 20 feet from us, talking while the one guy gets dressed. When they join us, the thing starts walking in its fucked up shuffle walk, and we notice that it has at least 2 more limbs than it should. At this realization, we bolt towards the other groups who were headed towards us. The teachers apparently heard us screaming and started towards us, leaving one teacher behind to watch the kids at the site. We all merge into one big group of kids. Teacher comes a minute later with one leading the way with a flashlight the size of my head. They start to scold us for being out here at night without supervision. And mid-sentence, we hear these huge shuffling movements in the trees. The teachers, without flashlights in hand, pull some from their coats and start scanning the woods with the rest of us. Everyone deadly silent, aside from one guy weeping. I think it was the one who was lighting up my urination. I'm shaking like a motherfucker at this point. I grab a flashlight from one of the kids who isn't scanning the woods, just holding it. We can't see the goddamn thing. Too many trees and such. But we can hear it moving, and it sounds like it's getting closer. Teacher Dave asks if we know the way back to camp. We swing around and see the towers barely in sight in that direction. Stands out due to the whittled look of the logs. There's no bark, which is why they were so fucking slippery. We say, yeah, we can. Dave says we need to make sure everyone has a flashlight, or is with someone who has one. Since the outcast kids weren't with us, we paired up easily where required. Me with the kid I took the light from. Dave tells us we're gonna sprint back to camp in case it's a bear or something. My mom almost called the school when I told her this story, as she thought that was highly irresponsible, but I explained the lack of bears and that was just him trying to dismiss the white man thoughts in his head. Everyone fucking makes a break for camp. We hear the thing pick up speed, even over our own footsteps and the wind in our ears. One kid eats shit, and the mellow teacher picks him up and continues. We all gather in the open-air canopy thing that had the tables and such. People who are at camp are barraging us with questions. And then, this fucking thing appears at the edge of the camp behind some trees, hiding it somewhat, but not enough to mask that it's obviously otherworldly. Dave just keeps repeating, "That's not a moose. That's not a moose." It seems to want to move towards camp, kind of shifts weight in that fashion. Some kids begin screaming. Teacher just starts yelling at it to get out of here and such. It turns and shuffles into the woods again. None of us get a wink of sleep. Ranger comes by in the morning asking what happened. Dave and Mellow Teacher take him away and talk with him. We can't hear anything of the conversation. All we hear is the Mellow Teacher in a raised voice exclaiming, "Deer don't have upwards of 6 goddamn legs, though." Ranger is visibly disturbed throughout the whole conversation. We wind up leaving the next day, aka a day early. Dave is the only one that will talk about it. He says he admits that he thinks it was the same creature, and that it wasn't a deer. School stops going to Cypress Hills due to changes in policy about field trips. And that's pretty much it. Never heard anything about it after that. I just assumed that we were all crazy. Be me 3 years ago, 16. Be at a really janky carnival. Lots of face painting and stupid kitty shit. Here with my little brother, let's call him Dale Gribble. Dale Gribble tells me he has to use the bathroom. Say okay and take him around the entire carnival, looking for a bathroom while Dale tries to not shit himself. What the fuck, there's no bathrooms here. Take him across the street to a pretty rundown restaurant. You know, the old ones that never really shut down, but haven't been taken care of very well, so they're pretty shitty. Dale Gribble says the place scares him. Tell him to suck it up as we walk in. As soon as we enter, the guy behind the counter's head snaps up to look at us, in a really fast, jerky movement. Even I'm kinda spooked at JPEG. He asks if we want anything to eat. Tell him we're just gonna use the restroom. He points to a dirty, busted-up old door in the back and says, "Shitters that away." Thank him and take brother in there. He takes a stall, and I go to the urinal to piss. Something feels off here. I'm not sure what it is, but the air in here feels heavy. Tell Dale to hurry it up. He just kinda whines at me. Think that's a little odd. He never really wants to just shut up. Wait for him outside the door for a good 10 minutes before going back in to see what's taking so long. Dale? No answer. Getting worried, I open the door to his stall and find, well, my brother, I guess. Except he's on the toilet, and his eyes are pitch black. These odd hands, covered in some nasty black liquid, had risen out of the toilet, and they were just all over his body, squeezing and constricting him. I pass out from the sight. I wake up in Mom's car, and I ask her where Dale is. My face when she asked who that was. My face when my mom was 100% convinced I was an only child. Never use a public restroom again. See, that's the fucking problem with these stories, is that they suck. No. It's fine to throw in, like, the odd curveball for the too spooky ending, but they just, like, you can tell they just get tired of typing, and they're just like, and you know, never went there again. The end. Yeah, I watched this child get absorbed by by venom. Never use a public restroom because of that again. My mom doesn't believe that there was a second child. I grew up with a little brother. My mom never knew him. The end. Anyway, now that we're past that, I'm never gonna use a public restroom again.